History remembers the reign of Elizabeth I as a golden age, an era of stability, flourishing arts, exploration, and the birth of England's identity as a rising global power. But history is fragile. One shift, one fever, one accident, and everything we know about the Tudor world could have shattered. Imagine England losing Elizabeth before she ever wears the crown. Before her steady hand calms religious division. Before her diplomacy restrains foreign powers. Before her survival prevents the Tudor dynasty from collapsing into ruin. This scenario isn't just a what-if, it's a reminder of how close England came to disaster. Elizabeth's life was threatened repeatedly: political plots, illness, imprisonment, and the constant fear of execution. Her survival shaped a nation. In this alternate timeline, we explore what breaks, who rises, and how England transforms when the child who would become the Virgin Queen never reaches the throne. To understand the disaster that her early death would unleash, we must first understand the miracle of her survival. Elizabeth I was never meant to reach the throne easily. Her path was carved through danger, politics, and sheer luck. Every step shaped England's future. From childhood, Elizabeth lived on the edge of extinction. She entered the world as the daughter of a disgraced mother and Boleyn, executed when Elizabeth was just 2 years old. Branded illegitimate, removed from succession, and raised with uncertainty, her very existence was a political threat. Any misstep, any illness, any rival faction could have wiped her from history. Many tried. Court factions schemed around her, foreign powers eyed her as either a pawn or an obstacle, and even inside England, her Protestant identity made her a target. After Henry VIII's death, England entered a period of instability. Edward VI's short reign pushed Protestant reforms rapidly, angering many nobles and clergy. When he died, the succession crisis erupted. Lady Jane Grey, Mary Tudor, and their supporters plunged the country into a tense, dangerous struggle. England became a tinderbox of religious and political uncertainty. When Mary I finally took the throne, her position was weak. She was Catholic, ruling a country with a growing Protestant minority, and she had no secure heir. This is why Mary ultimately needed Elizabeth, despite mistrusting her. Elizabeth, as the last viable Tudor with broad popularity, was the only figure capable of unifying the kingdom after Mary's eventual death. Yet Elizabeth's life under Mary was perilous. She was interrogated, imprisoned, nearly executed on suspicion of treason after Wyatt's rebellion. Simple illness could have ended her. Smallpox, fevers, and infections claimed countless lives, and she had no special protection. At any moment, the Tudor dynasty could have shattered. This uncertainty made Europe view England as unstable, unpredictable, and potentially ripe for exploitation. France and Spain watched closely, waiting for the smallest sign of weakness. In the real timeline, Elizabeth's eventual ascension provided a stabilizing force. She restored Protestant governance, balanced diplomacy with major European powers, and defeated existential threats like the Spanish Armada. Her 45-year reign didn't just strengthen England, it prevented collapse. But everything we depend on, every treaty, every victory, every moment of stability, vanishes the moment Elizabeth does. Without her, the Tudor dynasty becomes vulnerable. England loses its most effective ruler of the era, and a new, darker chain of events begins. This prepares us to step into the alternate timeline, where the Virgin Queen never lives to save her kingdom. There were countless moments when a young Elizabeth stood inches from death. Her survival in the real timeline feels almost improbable when we trace the dangers that stalked her from childhood onward. Where history shows remarkable endurance, the alternate timeline needs only one slip, one fever, one wrong decision, one political enemy, to end everything before she ever reaches the crown. England's repeated outbreaks of sweating sickness were among the deadliest threats. The disease struck without warning, killing within hours. Elizabeth survived multiple waves during her youth, especially the terrifying epidemics of the 1540s. In our alternate path, she doesn't. A single infection during one of these outbreaks could easily take the 12 or 14-year-old princess, removing her long before she could shape England's future. Another potential flashpoint was the scandal with Thomas Seymour. His reckless visits to Elizabeth's chambers, his inappropriate familiarity, and the political storms surrounding him put her in immense danger. In our divergence, instead of escaping with her reputation intact, Elizabeth becomes implicated. Under stress, she falls ill, or worse, the scandal leads to her execution as a threat to the crown. But the darkest danger came under Mary I. Elizabeth's imprisonment in the Tower during Wyatt's rebellion placed her at the edge of the axe. One stronger accusation, one forged letter, one harsher interrogation could have sealed her fate. The real timeline required luck, caution, and political hesitation to keep her alive. The alternate timeline needs none of that. One decisive act from Mary, or a simple illness in the damp confines of the Tower, ends her story. For this scenario, we choose the most historically plausible breakpoint. Elizabeth dies in 1554 while imprisoned under suspicion of treason, either from illness or execution quietly justified as national security. Now let's step into the world that follows her death. With this moment, the alternate timeline begins. England wakes to a morning without its future queen, and the consequences are immediate, brutal, and far-reaching. The death of Elizabeth Tudor in 1554 sends shockwaves through a kingdom already balancing on a blade's edge. What had once been a fragile hope for a stable Protestant succession vanishes overnight. In a single moment, Mary I faces both her greatest fear and her greatest opportunity. Mary's personal devastation is genuine. Despite their religious differences and years of suspicion, Elizabeth was her half-sister, her last connection to their father, Henry VIII. But politically, Mary emerges strengthened. Elizabeth's existence, popularity, and claim had always been a threat. Without Elizabeth, Mary's throne becomes more secure than ever. No rival Tudor remains to challenge her authority or appeal to England's growing Protestant population. Yet to Protestant nobles, gentry, and foreign allies, Elizabeth's death is nothing short of catastrophic. Panic spreads through Protestant strongholds. She was their hope, the last viable Tudor who could restore their religious cause once Mary's reign ended. Now, with no successor favoring their beliefs, the future looks suffocatingly Catholic. Many begin quietly preparing for exile, gathering ships, money, and allies abroad. Others whisper that Mary's regime has gone too far and that rebellion may be the only hope left. Foreign powers move quickly. France sees Elizabeth's death as a strategic opening. With England more dependent on Spain and lacking internal balance, French diplomacy shifts toward destabilizing Mary's rule and supporting Protestant underground movements. Meanwhile, Spain, Mary's strongest ally, celebrates the news quietly but strategically. Elizabeth's Protestant claim is gone, meaning England can remain firmly Catholic for the foreseeable future. Philip II advises Mary to strike harder, to crush dissent before it grows teeth. He pushes for stronger inquisitorial methods, tighter control over clergy, and a clearer suppression of Protestant nobles. Mary, newly married to Philip and desperate to secure her dynasty, becomes more aggressive. Elizabeth's death deepens her belief that God favors her mission to restore Catholicism. The Marian persecutions intensify earlier and with greater confidence. Protestants see burnings rise in number, and the fear of a permanent Catholic dynasty becomes suffocatingly real. What makes this moment so terrifying for England is the long-term implication. Without Elizabeth, the Protestant cause has no legitimate Tudor leader to rally behind. Mary has no heir. And the next claimant to the throne is Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic, a foreigner, and a puppet in waiting for French interests. England feels the walls closing in. Nobles shift alliances. Spies multiply. Europe watches like vultures circling a dying animal. The balance that Elizabeth's future once promised is gone. The kingdom spirals into paranoia, instability, and religious warfare. But Mary I's reign cannot last forever, and with Elizabeth gone, the succession crisis turns deadly. This is the moment where England's fate begins to fracture beyond repair. With Elizabeth dead, the Tudor dynasty enters a succession freefall. What was once a simple path, Mary followed by Elizabeth, now becomes a labyrinth of competing claims, foreign ambitions, and religious desperation. England, already tense under Mary I's Catholic restoration, now faces an even bigger question: who inherits a kingdom without an heir? In real history, Elizabeth's survival solved everything. Her legitimacy, popularity, and religious stance gave England a clear direction. But in this alternate world, the absence of Elizabeth turns the future into a battlefield with no clear winner. The most obvious successor is Mary, Queen of Scots. She is the senior legitimate descendant of Henry VII through the Stuart line. Young, Catholic, and married into the powerful French Valois dynasty, she becomes the immediate favorite of Catholic Europe. France sees her claim as a golden opportunity. If Mary Stuart becomes Queen of England, the Auld Alliance strengthens, and England effectively falls under French influence. For Spain, she represents a useful Catholic ally, but also a dangerous French puppet. Still, Catholic powers rally behind her. Opposing her is the Protestant choice, Lady Catherine Grey, granddaughter of Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's sister. She is the younger sister of Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. Many Protestant nobles see Catherine as their last chance to preserve their faith and prevent Catholic domination. She is English, Tudor-linked, and politically malleable. But her claim is weaker in seniority, and Mary I despises the Grey family. Beyond these two, foreign princes see opportunity. The Habsburgs consider Philip II's potential influence. The French toy with the idea of a Valois prince pressing a claim. Even minor German houses and Scandinavian monarchs whisper about dynastic marriages and future alliances. England is transforming into a prize to be won. Parliament becomes paralyzed. Its Catholic members argue that Mary, Queen of Scots, is the legitimate heir according to divine and hereditary law. Protestant members refuse, insisting that England must never fall under French Catholic control. Weeks turn into months of furious debate, covert threats, bribery, and political maneuvering. Meanwhile, the nobles sense danger. They know a succession crisis means bloodshed. They begin quietly raising militias, securing castles, stockpiling weapons, and negotiating with foreign ambassadors. Spies watch every conversation. Rumors fly through London. Secret pacts, French troops landing, Protestant uprisings planned. Ordinary people, too, sense that the ground beneath them is shifting. Sermons become sharper, taverns louder, markets filled with whispers. The real issue isn't just the crown, it's England's future identity. Protestant or Catholic? Independent or dominated by foreign powers? Reformist or traditional? Elizabeth's death didn't just remove a monarch. It removed the balancing force that held the nation together. And once Mary I dies, England explodes. The succession crisis becomes the disaster that Elizabeth would have prevented, and the spark that ignites the coming chaos. Across Europe, Elizabeth's death is seen not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. The continent's great powers had long viewed England as unpredictable, but manageable under Mary and potentially uncontrollable under Elizabeth. With her gone, England transforms from a rising threat into a vulnerable prize ready to be claimed. In the real timeline, Elizabeth's diplomacy, naval strength, and political intelligence prevented foreign domination and elevated England into a global power. But in this alternate reality, her absence invites every neighboring kingdom to shape England's destiny for their own benefit. Spain moves first. Philip II, already Mary I's husband, pushes aggressively for a succession that keeps England Catholic and aligned with Habsburg interests. Elizabeth's death removes the Protestant threat, and Philip sees a chance to anchor England permanently within Spain's sphere. His ambassadors pressure Mary to reinforce Catholic policies, eliminate Protestant nobles, and even consider altering succession laws to favor a Catholic claimant with ties to Spain. France counters instantly. Henry II champions Mary, Queen of Scots, married to his son, the Dauphin Francis. A French-backed Mary on England's throne would unite Scotland, France, and England into an unprecedented triple crown of Catholic power. French envoys flood England with promises, bribes, and threats. They argue that Mary Stuart is the only legitimate and divinely favored heir. Scotland becomes restless. With their young queen positioned as the leading claimant, Scottish nobles prepare for influence and conflict. Some see a chance to dominate English politics, others fear that French control will overshadow Scottish interests. Still, they organize troops along the border, anticipating turmoil they can exploit. The papacy, meanwhile, celebrates. Elizabeth had represented the revival of Protestant heresy. Her death signals hope for a Catholic England restored completely to Rome. Papal letters praise Mary, condemn Protestant agitators, and encourage strong measures to secure a Catholic succession. Foreign marriages become weapons. Princes from France, Spain, Austria, and even smaller German states are suddenly proposed as potential king's consort, regents, or claimants. Europe's thrones treat England as a chessboard, and while Europe circles like wolves, England tears itself apart. Elizabeth's absence creates not just a crisis at home, but a continental struggle for power, one that will reshape the fate of the British Isles forever. Without Elizabeth, England's religious future collapses into violence. Her reign in the real timeline created a balanced Protestant identity, firm but tolerant enough to prevent mass bloodshed. She stabilized the Church of England, avoided fanatical extremes, and gave both sides space to breathe. But in this alternate timeline, her absence rips that balance away. What follows is not slow reform, but a brutal collision between competing faiths, each convinced the other must be destroyed. Mary I reacts first. With Elizabeth gone, Mary feels divinely vindicated. Her Catholic restoration intensifies rapidly. Bishops loyal to Rome are rushed into key positions. Heresy trials double. Burnings rise not just as punishment, but as warnings. With no Protestant Tudor heir waiting in the shadows, Mary pushes harder than ever, determined to erase decades of reform in just a few years. This triggers the opposite reaction. Protestant nobles revolt. They see no future for their families, their estates, or their faith. Secret meetings multiply across East Anglia, Kent, and London. Former supporters of Elizabeth now plan open rebellion. Some reach out to France, others to German Lutheran princes, each seeking weapons and soldiers. The kingdom becomes a patchwork of armed camps waiting for collapse. Scotland moves next. With Mary, Queen of Scots positioned as the likely Catholic successor, Scottish factions exploit the chaos. Some Scottish nobles support English Catholic leaders. Others see this as an opportunity to invade weakened northern shires and secure influence before France can dominate everything. Then comes a humanitarian disaster, mass Protestant migration. Thousands flee England, sailing to the Netherlands, Geneva, and parts of Germany. Entire communities move overnight. The remaining Protestants who cannot escape go underground, forming secret churches, coded networks, and resistance groups. Mary in England becomes a furnace that hardens them into ideological steel. Foreign influence grows suffocating. France pressures Mary to align fully with Rome and support Mary Stuart's claim. Spain encourages Mary to root out heresy more aggressively, promising soldiers, money, and even direct intervention if rebellion spreads. England's religious policy becomes a tug-of-war between two Catholic superpowers, each seeking control of its soul. By the mid-1550s, England is no longer merely divided, it is spiritually shattered. Every county, every noble house, every parish becomes a battleground of belief. But the greatest shock comes after Mary I's death. With no Elizabeth to inherit, the religious explosion transitions into something far worse, an all-out succession war fueled by faith, blood, and foreign ambition. In this alternate timeline, the English crown becomes the deadliest prize in Europe. With Elizabeth gone, the transition from Mary I to the next monarch is not a peaceful handover. It is a continental struggle involving armies, spies, nobles, and foreign crowns. What was once a smooth succession becomes a multi-faction war for the soul of England. There are three realistic pathways for how England's future unfolds. Outcome: Mary, Queen of Scots, becomes Queen of England. This is the scenario most favored by Catholic Europe. When Mary I dies, the strongest legal claim belongs to her young cousin, Mary Stuart. With French backing and Catholic legitimacy, she has the momentum. If Mary, Queen of Scots, takes the throne, England and Scotland unified decades earlier, but not in the balanced, gradual way they did under James VI. Instead, England becomes a Catholic stronghold under heavy French influence. French advisors flood the English court. French troops may even station quietly in southern ports for protection. The papacy celebrates the restoration of a fully Catholic Britain. But this outcome is not peaceful. The Protestant North revolts almost instantly. Yorkshire, Norfolk, and parts of London rise in armed resistance. Scotland itself fractures. Protestant lords of the congregation oppose the Franco-Catholic dominance and secretly assist English rebels. Civil war becomes almost inevitable. Mary Stuart's England faces decades of uprisings, assassinations, and French-Spanish rivalry for influence over her policies. Outcome B: a Protestant Grey dynasty rises. If Protestant nobles act quickly after Mary I's death, they may install Lady Catherine Grey or one of her sons on the throne. This outcome mirrors Lady Jane Grey's brief claim, but with broader Protestant backing and French opposition. A Grey monarchy triggers a violent civil war with Catholic factions. France backs Mary, Queen of Scots. Spain, conflicted but opportunistic, may support the Greys to weaken French ambitions. England becomes a battleground. Protestant militias pour out of London and East Anglia, while Catholic nobles rally in the north and west. Churches burn, abbeys are seized, and both sides claim divine authority. A Grey king or queen can survive, but only by turning England into a harsher, more militarized Protestant state than Elizabeth ever envisioned. Outcome C: a foreign prince takes the throne. This is the darkest and most explosive path. If Parliament cannot agree, foreign powers impose a solution. A Habsburg prince or French royal could be installed as king consort or even sovereign. England becomes a puppet state. But the moment foreign rule is announced, the nobility revolts. They will not tolerate foreign taxation, foreign soldiers, foreign religious edicts, or foreign control of English law. Economy collapses as merchants resist foreign tariffs. Rebellion spreads like wildfire. England enters a decade of coups, assassinations, and economic ruin, its monarchy reduced to a bargaining chip for European empires. Whichever route England takes, the Golden Age is lost. Instead of Shakespeare, exploration, and stability, England's future becomes defined by civil war, foreign manipulation, and decades of chaos, an entirely different world forged by Elizabeth's absence. With Elizabeth gone, the world loses more than a queen, it loses a cultural revolution. Her reign, remembered as England's Golden Age, becomes a ghost of what might have been. Instead of flourishing arts, confident diplomacy, and rising national identity, England sinks into uncertainty and stagnation. In real history, Elizabeth's steady rule created the perfect environment for genius to bloom. Shakespeare, Marlowe, Spencer, and countless others thrived under her protection and national stability. But in this alternate timeline, there is no Shakespearean explosion, no cultural rebirth, no flowering of theater or literature. The creative class is too busy fleeing religious persecution or dying in civil conflict to build the foundations of English culture. Naval development stalls. Without Elizabeth's long-term investment, England never becomes the maritime challenger that would one day dominate the seas. The Spanish Armada is never defeated because England is too fractured to face it. Spain or France gains decisive influence over the Channel, drastically altering the balance of power. Exploration slows as well. Drake, Raleigh, and Hawkins may never rise, or their expeditions are cancelled amid domestic chaos. England's global footprint shrinks before it ever truly begins. Most damaging of all, England loses its Protestant icon, the symbol that rallied reform movements across Europe. Without Elizabeth's example, Protestantism spreads more slowly, with less confidence, less identity, and fewer allies. Instead of a proud, unified realm stepping onto the world stage, England becomes cautious, divided, and overshadowed. And the shockwaves spread far beyond England. What is lost at home reshapes the entire European and global future. Elizabeth's early death doesn't just reshape England, it rewrites the world. In her real reign, England set the stage for global influence, naval dominance, early colonies, and a strategic balance between European powers. Without her, England slips from the center of history into the shadows, and the global map is permanently altered. With England weakened or embroiled in succession wars, Spanish dominance extends far longer. Philip II consolidates influence over the Atlantic, the Americas, and even parts of Northern Europe. Portugal faces less English competition, maintaining its hold over Africa, Brazil, and Asia for decades. England's naval ambitions stall, leaving the seas open to Iberian control. If Mary, Queen of Scots, unites England and Scotland early, Scotland rises as a northern power, but its ambitions are regional rather than global. France gains leverage over English politics, manipulating succession and policy to favor Catholic interests and curb Protestant expansion. England is drawn further into continental conflicts, losing focus on overseas ventures. Colonization suffers the most dramatic blow. Jamestown never happens, the early English foothold in North America is delayed, and settlements that could have expanded English influence are instead claimed by Spain or France. Trade networks, colonies, and naval bases that would define the English Empire are postponed or vanish entirely. Long-term, the European balance of power shifts. A stronger Spain, a more influential France, and a less assertive England reshape the trajectory of Protestantism, warfare, and global trade. The world waits longer for English innovation, English exploration, and English culture to spread. So what does this timeline teach us? Elizabeth's survival was not only England's salvation but a cornerstone of world history. Her absence shows how fragile power, culture, and exploration really are, and how one life can redirect the fate of nations. A single breath, a single illness, and the golden age vanishes. Elizabeth I's life was not guaranteed. Her survival depended on luck, political caution, and timing. Without her, England spirals into chaos. Succession crises ignite civil wars, foreign powers manipulate the crown, religious violence tears communities apart, and the country's cultural, naval, and colonial ambitions stall indefinitely. The world shaped by Elizabeth, the confident, globally influential, culturally vibrant England, stands in stark contrast to the fractured, fearful, and unstable realm that could have been. Protestantism falters, Catholic dominance spreads under foreign influence, and the promise of exploration and empire lies dormant. Elizabeth's survival was a historical miracle. Her presence at the right time preserved England, steered its culture, and altered the course of global history. History hangs by threads, and hers was among the thinnest. Without her, the world we know might never have existed.